If you're a patient trying to find a great hair transplant surgeon, you have a daunting challenge. A doctor can create a website that makes him or her look like a superstar, when in reality they have little experience and might even be a black market doctor who delegates the procedure to unlicensed technicians. So what can you do as a patient? Unfortunately, there's no single credential that guarantees competence, but the first and simplest cutoff when searching for a surgeon is membership in the International Society of Hair Restoration Surgery, the ISHRS. If the surgeon you are considering is not a member, they are simply not serious about education, and nothing is more important than education. To help me explore this topic in greater detail, the Hair Transplant Road Show is going right to the top, to the president of the ISHRS, Dr. Nilofer Farjo in Manchester, England.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Haber, hair loss expert and hair transplant surgeon from Cleveland, Ohio. Join me and the Hair Transplant Road Show as I travel the globe seeking answers to important surgical and non-surgical hair loss questions from the true experts in the field.
So today, the Hair Transplant Road Show travels to Manchester, England, where my guest is Dr. Nilofer Farjo. Nilofer is the president of the International Society of Hair Restoration Surgery, the world's leading educational organization for hair restoration, and as president is the world's most influential voice in our field. Nilofer practices with her husband, Bassam, in one of the few husband and wife hair restoration surgical teams in the world. The Farjo office in Manchester is recognized throughout the world for its state-of-the-art facilities and surgical and artistic excellence. Nilofer has reached fellow status in the ISHRS. She's certified by the American Board of Hair Restoration Surgery. She was a winner of the Platinum Follicle Award by the ISHRS, granted for scientific accomplishments in the field of hair restoration. She's lectured extensively throughout the world and has contributed to multiple textbooks. I'm honored that she's taking the time from her other responsibilities to be my guest to help discuss the importance of membership in the ISHRS for any surgeon practicing hair restoration surgery. Hi, Nilofer.
Hi, Bob. Oh, it's a great pleasure to be here with you today, and thank you for such a wonderful introduction.
My pleasure. Nilofer, tell us first a little bit about the Farjo Clinic in Manchester, England.
Well, we have got a bespoke clinic that we set up in 2003, and that clinic is on 4 floors. We've got a surgical floor, we have got a floor for consultation administration, and then we've got a separate area, another floor for our lecture theatre and meeting rooms, because we do a lot of teaching. We also have a lab in our lower ground floor where we do some of our research projects. So it's kind of a place where it's our second home. We probably spend as much time here as we do in our own house. So it's a nice, comfortable place for us. And I think we've got about 18 employees.
That's great. And I've been there, so I can attest that it's a really an extraordinary facility. And definitely one of the best in the world. I've attended all 29 World Congresses held by the ISHRS. I've learned something new at every one of those meetings, and I've shared my knowledge with others at every one of those meetings. And I simply wouldn't be the surgeon I am today without the ISHRS. So it boggles my mind to learn of hair surgeons that promote themselves heavily, some with popular YouTube channels, and yet are not members of the ISHRS. Please explain to our viewers the role of the ISHRS.
Well, the ISHRS started nearly 30 years ago now, so it's been going a long time. And it was started by a group of forward-thinking hair surgeons who wanted to share knowledge with each other, and also to bring in other people into a collective group. Now, the kind of 3 pillars that they set up were education, research, and collegiality. And those things are really what underpins how the society runs itself. So, for example, in the educational field, we have an annual congress a World Congress, and this year it's going to be in Panama City, and that's our 30th one. So we're going to have some great celebrations for that. We also, throughout the year, have a number of other things. So there's all sorts of learning that can go on throughout the year. So even if you can't get to the annual Congress, you can do lots of stuff online. So there's a basics course. There's an advanced course that is used as well for learning for doing the board exam, which we can talk about a bit later. And there are webinars where people can get CME points, ACCME recognized points for their continuing medical education that we all have to do to keep our licenses. So if we then move on to the next pillar of the ISHRS, that's research. So we do have research opportunities for people to get grants from the ISHRS, and every year there's between 20,000 and 60,000 available to give out in grants for you to do a research project. So even if it's a small scale project, not necessarily, something that's a high level, and you want to kind of do a little bit of research and present it, there's that opportunity. So, there are things that we can do to help our members to learn. And then collegiality, the third pillar. So I've already talked about the Global Council and, getting involved with the local issues and local societies. And, this plus the World Congress and all these meetings. In the World Congress, we have between 600 and 800 attendees that come every year. So that's a lot of people to network with around the world. And one thing that I find really valuable with that is that I have patients who travel or they move countries. And if I want to find someone to carry on with their care, I know somebody in their part of the world, and I can contact them and say, right, my patient so-and-so is coming, either on holiday or they're coming to travel, or they've got a problem. They've gone on holiday and they've got an issue with their surgery, and I can easily find someone that I can send that patient to. And, the other thing is that, when you travel around the world, it really is nice to be able to meet up with friends, go to another country, go to all corners of the world, and you'll know someone from the ISHRS who lives there. And it's just a great way of kind of communicating both on a professional level, but also socially.
Nilofer, I couldn't agree with you more about the importance of the ISHRS, of course, and all of those three pillars. And if you're a surgeon watching, a hair transplant surgeon, and you're not a member of the ISHRS, you're missing out on incredible amounts of learning. Physicians are nonstop learning from the first day of our careers to our last, and so you're not an expert, or if you're an expert, you're not going to stay an expert if you don't keep learning. And that's one of the huge things that the ISHRS can give us. And if you're a prospective patient and your surgeon is not a member of the ISHRS, your surgeon is turning his or her back on the most important thing possible, which is education. I think it's a hugely important, indicator of the seriousness about education of a surgeon. As I introduced you, I listed several, though certainly not all, of your credentials and accomplishments: member of the ISHRS, fellow status, president, textbook author, Follicle Award winner, diplomat of the ABHRS. If a patient could only learn about one of them, which would be, do you think, the most important for them to know in terms of, what's the first cutoff about whether or not I should consider this person as a surgeon? Is it membership in the ISHRS, or is it something else?
I think, membership of the ISHRS, it certainly should be a top choice for patients because, we have so much available for those surgeons in terms of keeping up to date with the latest developments, improving their skills, and really that's the best way to actually serve your patient is by keeping up to date.
Patients always ask, how can I guarantee, what can I look for to guarantee that I get a great surgeon, and there unfortunately is nothing. There's no credential, including membership in the ISHRS, that guarantees competence. Nothing that proves you have an artistic eye. But without a commitment to education, nothing else matters. And a long commitment to education is necessary to be eligible for fellow status in the ISHRS, which is why I would rank that highest. In Ohio, there are dozens and dozens of surgeons now who at least claim to be hair transplant surgeons. Of those, exactly 4 are members of the ISHRS, and 3 have reached fellow status. So the difficulty patients have here in Ohio could be narrowed down tremendously if they simply eliminate anyone who's not a member of the ISHRS. Are there similar statistics in the United Kingdom?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think this is a worldwide phenomenon, really, and certainly in the UK, the British Association for Hair Restoration Surgery has been, kind of encouraging all its members to become ISHRS members. And in fact, we've taken a lot of the stipulations for ISHRS membership, and we have put that as a qualification to join the British Association. For instance, having to go to a certain number of meetings to keep your membership. So it's not a matter of, you're a member by just paying the fee. You have to actually go to meetings to remain a member. So that's an added protection for the patient, because the patient, if they look on the ISHRS website, it tells you what the requirements are to be a member of the ISHRS. And so hopefully more and more of the local societies will do the same. If you put the money in, it pays off with patients coming to you. So I don't know how many thousands and thousands of pounds worth of or dollars worth of education I've paid over the years. But I'm a busy surgeon. Every day I have got surgery because patients recognize that as being something that they look for.
I was commenting on the requirement of that continuing medical education, and then because of the expense, some doctors might choose not to go to the meetings, figuring they'll figure out some other way. But in order to maintain those memberships, if they're required to go to the meetings, when they're there, they recognize how valuable that is and how important it is. When people look at websites, when patients look at websites, it's so difficult to differentiate and to believe what they're reading. I roll my eyes when I read on someone's website that they won, best hair transplant surgeon of the year for the past 5 years or something like that. Prospective patients need to know that's nonsense. There's no such legitimate award. This means that a group of your friends voted for you, or an organization that you pay money to promote you created a fictitious award. If you read something like that, stay very, very far away. There are different membership categories in the ISHRS: associate member, full member, fellow. What do those mean?
So when you first join the ISHRS, you become an associate member. And then once you've gone to 3 meetings that qualify for membership, and it doesn't just include the annual meeting, there's the workshops, etc. There's a list of meetings that actually qualify. So once you've gone to 3 meetings, you become a full member. And then to maintain your full membership, you have to go to 1 meeting every 3 years. So it's not that onerous. And it doesn't have to be, again, as I say, the big World Congress. You can go to one of the smaller meetings, and the live surgery workshops, for instance, they rotate around the world. So it may be that, if you're in Europe, there'll be a live surgery workshop in Europe. And that, will qualify you to maintain your membership. And then to become a fellow, you have to gain a certain number of points across a number of categories. So one of the categories is going to meetings. Another one is things like writing articles. And another is becoming involved in the society, either being on the board or being an editor of the journal, So there's a whole list of things so you have to be a very rounded person. And another thing, for example, is there's the American Board of Hair Restoration Surgery. So this is an exam. It isn't recognized by the Medical Specialties Board. However, it is set up in the same way that any other board exam is set up. And you have to have a certain amount of experience. You have to present some of your cases and some of your complicated cases. You then have to sit both a written and an oral exam. So, that really kind of tests a surgeon's ability to assess patients. And you have to be able to assess on a number of levels. You have to assess how their hair loss affects them mentally. You have to assess whether they should only go on medication. You assess whether, in the long term, they're better off not having surgery because they've got such a strong family history and they're destined to go completely bald. So, there's all of these kind of things that really are available for the prospective patient to look for in a surgeon.
So I think a prospective patient needs to know that the fellow designation involves a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of focus on making yourself the best doctor possible. It's a great, great credential, if you will, to help separate things. Again, it's no guarantee, but if someone has reached fellow status, they're serious and they've been doing it for a good long time. The ISHRS is the only hair transplant society in the world that devotes time and financial resources to combat the black market, which in our field refers to clinics around the world where technicians and not surgeons perform the procedure. Other societies sometimes talk about it or complain about it, but the ISHRS actually does things to try to fight this, which is a big problem, not just in Europe, and it's a problem right here in Ohio, right here in the United States, where doctors are delegating. Can you describe some of the initiatives of the ISHRS to combat the black market?
So a few years ago, the ISHRS set up a campaign called the Fight the Fight campaign, and it fights against illicit and fraudulent clinics. We call them clinics. Sometimes they're not even clinics, who are doing transplant surgeries. So sometimes there is a doctor there, but very often the doctor doesn't know how to do a transplant, and they hire in technicians. And technicians may have learned some of their techniques from a legitimate surgeon, but then they go and set up on their own. Now, it is illegal in the majority of countries in the world for an unlicensed person to cut through someone's skin. And that's what, I would consider surgery, is someone who's cutting through skin. Now, some of these clinics say, no cutting, no scars, no this, no that, no pain. You cannot do any surgical procedure without any of those things happening. So, if you hear those kind of words like scarless, painless, no downtime, unlimited amount of grafts. So what I mean by that is, you have a certain amount of donor hair that's available to be transferred to your balding areas. And that is limited for your lifetime. And you cannot have unlimited grafts. It's a falsehood. It's a way of getting patients to come in. And the other thing that they do is they use cut prices. So they decrease their prices to such an extent that it's undercutting what a legitimate surgeon needs to be able to run a clinic. So, for example, I need to give my staff a decent wage. I need to sterilize my instruments. I need to comply with local guidance. All of those things do cost money. I need to educate myself. That costs money. So, if you're going to someone legitimate, it's going to cost you money. And you get what you pay for. And that is true of anything in life. You get what you pay for. You want a cut price hair transplant, then you pay the cut price, but you will not get a hair transplant that is undetectable. So you should never be able to tell that someone has had a hair transplant if it is done correctly. If it's not done correctly, where the hair direction, the artistry, the design is wrong, then you will be able to tell that you've had a transplant. The other thing that happens is over-harvesting. So that's going back to the unlimited grafts. Now, if you take out every single hair from the back of your head, you're going to have a bald back of your head instead of a bald top. Now, if that's what you're aiming for, then that's great. But if it's not what you're aiming for, you want hair throughout your head, then please don't go to these clinics. Go to someone who's got the proper training, belongs to a society like the ISHRS that does ongoing training, and has a license. So, technicians have to have a license as well.
Hugely important points. And people come to me during my consultation and say, I'm honestly, to save money, I'm thinking of going to Turkey. And I say, well, if you want to go to Turkey, that's fine. I'll give you the names of some world-class surgeons in Turkey. But guess what? They're not cheap. They're very expensive because they're world-class surgeons. And if you're not going to be paying what seems like a reasonable amount of money, you're not going to get good quality work. It doesn't matter what field we're talking about, medicine, law, you're buying a car, you're buying a television, you're buying anything. If you're going to buy the cheapest thing out there, you're going to get what you pay for. Really, really true. And the lure of the black market is to save money. Yeah. But the disasters that are coming out of the black market, wherever it is, it could be right here in Ohio or elsewhere in the United States, if it's an inappropriate delegation, and the surgeon will do that to save money, the results are disastrous. There are those on social media who like to criticize the ISHRS and blame it for some of the problems facing our field, including the black market, which I find absurd, as the ISHRS has trained more surgeons in both strip and FUE techniques than all other societies in the world combined. And it must be frustrating at times as president to respond to those kinds of attacks.
Yeah, it is, and it's it's very disheartening to get those kind of comments, and a lot of them are from doctors.
Yeah. What's been the most rewarding aspect of serving as president of the ISHRS?
Well, it has been nice to be able to create some initiatives. And one of the ones, so every president can start some initiatives. And one of the ones that really has been my pet project has been to start a women's group. So women hair transplant surgeons, to look at what the specific needs are of women. Now, when the ISHRS started, 30 years ago, there were only maybe about 10% of the women who made up the membership. It's now 20%, so it's increasing, and I'm only the third woman who's been president. And we do have now more and more women who are coming onto the board. But there are some specific needs, and I set up a task force to look at some of those specific needs. And they are different than men's needs. They're like, how does a woman cope during pregnancy? And we're hoping to set up, a permanent kind of group for women. And we're not going to exclude the men. They can join if they wish. So it's not an exclusive club or anything.
Well, that's great. But if the direction goes the way it's gone in other parts of medicine, it'll be the men that need their society. Dermatology used to be exclusively men. And there was a women's derm society that was created many years ago, but now there are many more women entering the field of dermatology than men. So, and in medicine in general, women now outnumber men in terms of matriculating medical students. So, I foresee many more women becoming very active in the society, and that's great. Sure. I think one take-home message for prospective patients is to look carefully at your surgeon's training, credentials, membership. And if they're not a member of the ISHRS, it means that either they don't care enough about education, which is very worrisome, or they're not allowed to join. And that's highly concerning, as the ISHRS is very, very welcoming. And only there are certain things you must agree to in order to become a member, or you're excluded, and that's not a group of people you want to go to. So, stay away from those doctors. Before the black market, membership in the ISHRS, while always important, didn't help patients as much because pretty much every hair surgeon was a member, and there was no black market. And even today, if you're considering strip surgery, you're not part of the black market. It's 100% safe. But if you're considering an FUE procedure, that's where you have to work carefully to make sure you're not entering the black market. And the single best and simplest method of avoiding a bad doctor or clinic is to look for ISHRS membership. Again, it's not a guarantee of anything, but it's the first cutoff that you should use, I think.
No, I agree completely. When people start coming up with excuses of why not, that it should be something that turns you away. And certainly anyone who says that they're the best in the world or they've done the most hair transplants in the world, you can't make those claims and really be.
Or they invented the procedure, or they're the first person to ever do FUE, the first person to do. These are people you just say, thank you, goodbye, find somebody else, and to just get up and walk away. Very, very important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So. Any other final comments about the importance of the ISHRS?
No, I think you've covered it all, and I love the ISHRS. It's great fun. It's not just about learning and sitting listening to lectures. We have a wonderful time. We have some great social events. And wonderful networking and lovely friends all around the world. So I just love it. And I look forward to the annual meeting every year.
Likewise. Well, thank you, Nilofer, for sharing your wisdom and taking time out of your presidential duties to be on the program today. How can our viewers get in contact with you and the Farjo Clinic to explore surgical options with you?
If you want to get in contact with me, you can just search Farjo, Farjo. And you will find our website, or if you want to jot it down, it's www.farjo.com or farjo.net. You'll find us. We're the only Farjos in the world that do hair transplants. The only. So I welcome.
Easy to find, and I'll be showing the information on the screen. So follow the information on your screen. You will not go wrong if you go to the Farjo Clinic. It's one of the best in the world, without question. I hope our viewers find this episode helpful on their journey. Please help our program by selecting like, subscribe, and requesting notifications when our next episode is available. Again, the information on your screen is where you can find Nilofer and Bassam. See you next time on the Hair Transplant Road Show. Thank you, Nilofer.